Death Consciousness is the most endearing category of cult classic to me, the kind that is inconspicuously posted on the internet with little to no following, only for it to harbour an unexpected legacy and popularity of its own in the months or years to come, often by word of mouth alone. It's difficult to say that Have a Nice Life were exactly pioneering anything, as opposed to confirming that it is possible to record sad, loud music in the bathtub and still have it come out as an intense rattle through your ear bones all the way down to your tibia, which I suppose is pioneering something at the end of the day. It's an inventive culmination of alternative genres that enabled expression of the dark wells of our psyches. The recordings on this album aren't very clear, but that's part of the charm. Instead of feeling sorely limited by this lo-fi quality, it uses that raw muffled sound to its advantage, in moments sounding completely suffocated and on its last zombified knee shuffles of human energy. It is, at the very least, a commendable record, even though entire passages of it sound like the world's most depressed loading screen, and the actual bulk of the album that I can remember off the top of my head is big distorted drum. But understandable, Have a Nice Life, I get it. I personally think every idea on here was refined for the even better 2014 record The Unnatural World, which tested my tolerance for reverb even further, but made up for it just by being, good. It strikes with the thundering impact that makes me forget that the record's drums are all synthesized and not real. Fuck it, the whole thing seemed unreal. Couple this with Dan Barrett's side project as GILES Corey, and it's evident that Have a Nice Life know what they're doing. Well, they could do, but on the new album, Sea of Worry, in a futile attempt to polish and patch up the production, they ironically put a tough puncture in the usual raw power that comes from their music. To this, I might be asked why I can't just judge this album on its own terms and had to spend a chunk of the video talking about the past. I didn't have to. In actuality, I liked one of the singles that dropped for this album, the title track. I immediately noticed how much clearer their production was, how much more propulsive the tempo was, and how much closer it sounded to a proper rock song. You can hear yells of grief echoing in the background, and by no means is it a phenomenal track, but it's a promising one, although now I realise that promise from the rest of Sea of Worry had its fingers crossed behind its back the entire time. The panicky post-punk propulsions made me think that I was listening to Interpol, and I mean new Interpol, by the point that Paul Banks' vision was just a badly lit Polaroid of the smudgy reflection of the old stuff that was vaguely good. You can read the album's allusions towards religion, and particularly hell, which adds an interesting thematic depth that's never reflected in the music. Instead, it's shoehorned into the last track as an audio recording of some dude who reckons our teachings from the Bible are bullshit, which just seems like the shortcut route for presentation. Little additions like the piano towards the end of Dracula beat cock tease with what could have carried this album much more. Just some more instrumentation to compensate for the songs themselves, which seem way emptier and plainer than they truly deserve to be. These bits with extra unsettling instrumentation actually makes up the most evocative parts of the record, and we just don't get enough of them. Instead, we get the aggressively boring rock riffs of Trespasser's W, and a drone piece right after it. The drone piece itself has far more attention to texture that touches the spirit and whittles around with it like a popped egg yolk, but it was hard to appreciate something structurally vague after 4 tracks that were emotionally vague. The grit scrubbed out of everything helps no more. Creating an album that doesn't make me weep in Old English text MT, it makes me snore in Calibri Light. The album then changes its mind out of the blue in a gimmicky callback to the distorted lo-fi blasts on Death Consciousness, a switcheroo so out of place it may as well have had trap drums plastered all over it. The album ends with its longest track, a sinister march to the underworld, and I suppose the satanic aura makes itself most known here, and that's because it sounds like a fragment from their old work with the soul taken out of it. I don't even want Death Consciousness again, we already have it there, but the new album we got has a strange decision between lifeless new material and tired old material, and the real deal of that old material was made with a budget far less than what the new material's being made with. I don't know what this indicates for the band, I don't know them personally, but the album just sounds confused. I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed. Probably to the point where I got a little mad. Between this album's references to Satan and Kanye's last album praising God, it certainly tells me that neither's influence is suddenly going to save your music.